Hi, Amy with Fashion Toppings here, and this is part 2 of my farmhouse table makeover. Now, in the previous videos, you saw me sand, use Kills primer, and then Valspar's chalk paint spray to do the chairs, and now it's time to hit those cushions. I'm going to reupholster the cushions, and first thing you need to do is flip your chair over. If there's any screws, remove the screws to take your cushion out of your kitchen chairs. And then now it's time to upholster. Here we go. Okay, so we finished painting our project. I removed the chairs and basically I'll insert a picture. If you flip the chair over, you'll see there's screws. You just remove the screws and this pops out. Now they have 2 screws just at the top part that went through this board. And I've already done 3 out of the 4 chairs. And what I'm finding is most of these holes that I have here, since the chairs are so old, they're stripped. And my cushion fits nice and firmly in there. So the holes were basically stripped. I'm gonna show you how to do it so that the holes are still visible, but I'm gonna cover mine up because I tried to screw my chairs back in, and once the screw gets in the hole, it just sits there and spins. And the cushions fit nice and snug, they're not gonna pop out. But I'll show you what you can do if you do have to make sure you don't have holes covered. And I'm just gonna cover my holes. Okay, first thing we need to do is remove this fabric. You can leave the fabric on if you want to, but they also have fabric underneath this. And so it's been reupholstered. I don't know why anybody would reupholster with this ugly purple fabric, but you just have to, my other ones had thicker red fabric. It was very thick tweed. So all I had to do is pull, and that fabric came up and pulled up the staples too. This is thin fabric, so if I try to pull it, it's actually just gonna tear the fabric. So I'm trying to get underneath these staples, pop them up. I'm just using a little needle nose plier because they're sharp at the end. Make sure you have a trash can nearby so you don't get any staples on your floor. Okay, so I got the staples removed, and here is the cushion. It looks so much nicer this way. I don't know why they covered it, but you can take this piece and trace it, lay it on the fabric that you want to use, and then you have an automatic, you have the size that you want. I already pre-cut mine. I'll be using this adorable coffee cup cafe fabric. But what I want to do first is I'm going to cover it in just a white lining. And the only reason I'm doing that is because this is kind of a burlappy fabric, and it would be fine to go over it, but it's just sticky. I don't know how to describe it, so I just want the added protection. You do not have to do this, but I am covering mine with a lining first, and then I'll use my chosen fabric. And with this, I just lay it down, and then just making sure I've got it wide enough to cover. We'll be trimming some of it off, but I'm just cutting it so it's big enough. Okay, so, okay, we're gonna flip it over. You can make your fabric, I mean, you can make your fabric as big as you want. I make mine fairly big because I don't want to have like multiple staple lines. So you do 1 staple on each side first. Okay, I'm going to pull snug. Hold it, staple. Open it up. Hold it up, nice and snug. Okay, so it looks like a mess. One staple on each side, starting off, and I will trim off this excess fabric. Okay, and then how I do my corners, here's my corner right here. I'm gonna wrap it just like a present, but what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my center, I'll zoom in a little bit. I'm gonna take my point and then flatten it out. Here's my corner. There's a lot of ways to do it, but this is just how I prefer. And I just push that flat. Here's my corner right there. And I staple it. Staple it there. Now I'm gonna take one of my flaps here. Make it nice and snug around the edge. And I'm just pulling it over to the other side. And stapling. And then I take this one. Here's my other tall corner piece. You can trim this off if you want to, now that no one sees the bottom of your chair. You can trim it off if you want to. It'll give you less bulk. I take the other flap and fold it over. It's kind of like folding a diaper, I guess. And fold it over. And then your corner. Then you have a nice, neat corner. Now granted, I'm gonna read, this is the underlining. Okay. Do that to all the corners. Pull it. Okay, so pull that edge up, make sure it's flat. Staple it down. So you got the two flaps. Go one way. Making sure it's smooth. And then trim off the excess. Okay, now we got this other flap here. Now fold that over, flat. Nice and flat. So we have two sides. Now does this one have a hole in it? Yeah, this one has a hole in it, so I'm going to do this one last. I'm going to show you how to do it if you have to compensate for a screw hole, which I don't have to because mine are all stripped. Okay, so my last corner, push down the point, make it nice and smooth, staple it down, take one side, make sure you get it flat. Staple it down. The more staples, the better. But this is just my lining, so I'm not using a lot of staples because I don't want to have to staple over it. Okay, and now the other flap. Push it over. sure everything's pulled snug. Just adding a few more staples on there. I'm gonna add a few more staples in this one. Okay. So this is what we're looking at right now. Nice and neat, but this is just my lining. Okay, now I'm gonna show you in the lining, but I'm not gonna do the same thing with my top cover, because like I said, I'm not worried about the screw holes because mine are stripped and my cushions fit right. You push them down into a groove and they stay nice and tight, so I'm not worried about it. Now I have a hole in the wood right there. I would do the same technique. However, my little centerpiece that comes up right here, see, I remember when I did this? I would feel where that hole is and I'd staple below it, so I'm not above the hole. Okay, and I'm on top of another staple, so I'm gonna have to hammer that in now. So now I still can see my hole right there. You can't really see it, but so I stapled below it. Everything is gonna be below. We're gonna do the same thing. Pull the side over. My hole under the fabric is right there, so I'm gonna staple lower. And then flip and cut my fabric off if I want to. Okay. And then I'm gonna flip this over. Also stapling very low, because I'm going to be cutting that fabric out. Oops, I'm out of staples. Okay, well, and then I'm going to trim off this fabric. Okay. Now, I will be adding more staples to it, but I need to cut this fabric back away from that hole so I can get to it. My hole's right here, so now I can get to the hole. Trim this back a little bit farther. So it looks kind of silly, but now I have access to the hole. And I need to add staples to my staple gun real quick. Let's see if this works. So now I'm gonna go back and staple along this line that I cut out. So, but I still have my opening. Right here is where the hole is for the screw. Staple below it. And staple around it. So that's how I did it different for if you have to compensate for a hole. I just trimmed away the fabric and just made sure I had enough staples going around it. Now you can trim this fabric off if you want. That's completely up to you. No one sees the bottom of your project anyway. Okay. You can use as many staples as you want to make sure it's secure. I don't want to do too many since I'm covering it again with another fabric. But see, now it looks, I'll zoom back out. So even this looks nice. Corners. Okay. Now, this lining leaves a lot of shedding. There we go. Now, for my fabric. I always make sure the chair is facing me. So your butt would be, you know, here, or your back would be here, and your knees would be down here. So I'm looking at it as if I'm looking at the chair. That way, I make sure I got my fabric facing the right direction. That's the most important thing. If you're working with velvet, make sure that the grain of the velvet is going towards your knees, from your back to your knees. And this, since I have words on it, I gotta make sure that every chair is facing the right direction, that the words are straight. So I lay it on top. Make sure it's centered the way I want. Making sure my words are straight with the bottom of the chair. Eyeballing it. Get the wrinkles out. Okay, we'll get the wrinkles out when we're pulling. Okay, now flip it over and repeat the process. One staple on each side. Pull nice and snug without moving the fabric. Nice and snug. That'll remove the wrinkles. Hold it tight. There you go. And then on this side. Okay, now I can start doing my corners. Same thing as I did before. Here's our corner. Hold it up, take my point, and push it down. There's lots of ways to do corners. This is just how I feel. Make sure you're not on top of another staple. Okay, so now I got my 2 points right here. Push one over. Staple. Doing 2. Okay, and then got my other flap. Now fold it over. Okay, now just add more staples. Secure it. Oh, ran out of staples again. And there is my new cushion. I love the print. My words are nice and straight. My corners. Okay, now I'm gonna go set it on the chair. It's easy as that.